Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you. Please be seated. So normally we talk about the whole John the Baptist being beheaded thing because who doesn't love a story where somebody gets decapitated? And in our culture, we seem a little bit kind of repulsed by this story, which is probably why every boy, probably 5 through 95, finds this story absolutely fascinating. Please remember that the Bible is an oral storytelling, and they were usually stories told by, kind of your bar stories. So guys around the campfire, your buddy, you share these good stories. And there are some shocking stories in the Bible. Really, I think it should probably come wrapped in plastic, and they should check your ID when you buy a Bible. Because if you actually read it, there is some stuff in there that is interesting. And so we frequently, because this is like one of the few stories where you're all on the edges of your seats and you're like, I can't wait to hear what she's going to say about this. Yeah. But I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you a funny joke, though. Because y'all know my love for our honeybees that we have. So anything bee, I'm like, ooh, bees. So there's a funny meme of, and some of you may have seen this, making its ways around Facebook because it's John the Baptist story, right? And Sunday school teacher, this joke's for you, Laura. She's telling the children about John the Baptist, and they're listening. She says, now, unfortunately, he was beheaded. And there's this little boy who has this little imaginary bubble, and it's this dude with the head of a bee. I love it because it's so great. So John the Baptist was beheaded. So go ahead. What did I learn in church today? Remember, he liked honey. There's a reason he was out in the wilderness eating milk and honey. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, anyway, what is my sermon really about? Because this story is this fun little tale at the end because Herod's kind of crazy and he's really, really paranoid about stuff. And so, but the story actually begins because Jesus is out and about doing his thing, and these people are like, dude, who is this guy? I mean, who is this? Who does all this stuff? This is wild. And so we as humans like to try and make sense of things, right? We need a label on things. And so they're like, well, maybe it's the ghost of John the Baptist. And John the Baptist is really mad, because he was beheaded. And nobody wants to go through life with that many eyes. And so he's come back, and he has these powers now that he's back because he's risen like Elijah and he's doing all these things because John the Baptist is a prophet, correct? We all know that, right? I'm not like, surprise, John the Baptist. Okay, all right, I just want to make sure because sometimes I say things and we're not all there. Okay, so they're like, who is this? What is this? What is this? And here's the important piece of this. Not the fact that Herod is superstitious and he's really, really worried that this guy he killed because he kind of liked him. Because, prophets are intriguing. Even if you don't like what they say, they're kind of intriguing. And this really isn't a lesson in those sinful, really hot women who are the pathway to hell. Did you know that Tertullian called women the gateway to hell? That's right. I want a shirt that says that. Gateway to hell, right here. That's what it looks like. So that's not really what this is about, though frequently it will go in that direction. This is about the fact that these humans who are experiencing Jesus are trying to make sense of this. They really need to label Jesus. They really need to make sense of who he is and what he's doing. Because we've got this guy out here doing all this stuff, and we don't know what to call him. We don't know what he's doing. We need a label. Because we, as humans, we like to label things. Because it helps us, put it in a box. It's easier to make sense of what's going on. We can categorize it. Suddenly, we can control it, right? Because we know that Jesus is really the ghost of John the Baptist come back to get Herod because Herod's a jerk. And we all know that we're not supposed to like Herod, right? Anyone here like, I'm pro-Herod? No. We all know that, though, right? Because this is the Israelites, and we don't like Herod. We don't know king. Kings are stupid, right? So, a funny story. Asked me about Arby's and what they thought of having a queen for a while. They're like the Israelites of the bee world. They're like, we don't need a queen. We got this. You need a queen. Side story. Anyway, but I'm on bee head here. So we as humans like to categorize. We need a system. We need things to make sense because then we can control it. But here's the trick. God explodes all labels, all means of trying to make sense of things, of categorizing them, of putting them into little boxes. As soon as we think we know, we have a definition of what a prophet is. We have a definition of what a Roman Catholic is. We have a definition of what a Protestant is. God comes along and it's like, boom. What this is really about is about being a follower of Christ. But we really want those labels and those rules and those systems of order, don't we? Because it helps us make sense. We're like, I'm an Episcopalian. That means this. Can you imagine how frustrated I am when they're like, so I'm interested in becoming an Episcopalian. I'm like, oh, that's great. So how do I become an Episcopalian? You follow Jesus and you go to church. Preferably in an Episcopal church, but, worst case scenario, you go wherever you got to go. Just go, follow Jesus. Yeah, because Jesus, we like the Christian message. And they're like, well, what about doctrine? I'm like, oh, we don't have no doctrine. You love Jesus, you love other Christians, because when you love God, you love what God has created. So that's our doctrine. It's a doctrine of love. Well, what about transferring membership? You can, I guess. But Christianity doesn't really need a paper with you on a roll system, because really how I measure churches is not based on a series of numbers that we try to distill our church into. It's based on how many Christians are out there living the Christian life, because really, how you measure a church is not how you measure it on a Sunday morning. Sunday morning isn't church. Sunday morning is filling you up and preparing you for being church out there, which is hard to do. It's hard out there. So really, we do this for an hour so you get a break. You're like, oh, okay. It's like going to the gas station. I mean, have you ever been like driving in the desert and you're like, I've got 17 miles left on the tank. And then you get to the gas station and you're like, woo! 3 miles left. Totally made it. That is church in a secular world. That is church. It has nothing to do with the driving that you're doing when you're out of the gas station. It's the fact that it fills you up and equips you to drive and do the things you've got to do out there. But we want a label. What does it mean? And I'm like, well, it means you go. It means you follow Jesus. But wait. But what's the difference between an Episcopalian and a Baptist? I'm like, oh, girl, everything. Not really. Not really. It's really, how do we live this Jesus life? And we live this Jesus life by loving one another and committing ourselves to it again and again and again, even when it feels really, really hard. We keep committing ourselves to this, and you can do that in so many different ways. This is our little slice of how we do it here. But it's not universal, and it's certainly not required. Now, that is not permission to be like, oh, I should go church shopping. If you're shopping, you better stay. You better buy what we're selling. I ain't selling anything. You all know that. But we want that. We want those labels. We want that control. We want that system that makes sense. And yet, God comes to us and explodes all of that. So here's what I say to you. The Christian life is chaotic. It's messy. It doesn't have labels. It cannot be contained. It cannot be contained by labels. It cannot be contained by Christian versus Buddhist. It cannot be contained by Roman Catholic versus Lutheran. It cannot be contained. Now, I'm very pro-Episcopalian, obviously. I think we got a handle on this. And I'm a firm believer that when Jesus comes back, he's going to be like, ooh, Episcopal Church. They're doing it right over there. Now, I'm a firm believer in that. I ain't going to, hang anything on that, though. I'm not risking my life on that, because I'm pretty sure we're doing a few things wrong, too. But here's the deal. So how do we do this? How do we live a Christian life? How do we let go of the labels of needing to know, who is this Jesus person exactly? Is he a prophet? Is he the Messiah? Is he the ghost of John the Baptist who's just really ticked off right now? Because, he was beheaded and don't nobody want that. Does it matter? Does it matter? And that's what I ask you today. When you peel all the layers away, all the rules and all the labels and all the this and all the paperwork and all the stuff, the hierarchy that we have put on it and layered and layered and layered this up to be a big, big behemoth, at the very core, what really, truly matters? Because that is what being a Christian is. It's what at the very, very core does this mean to you? And really, for us as Christians, it means loving God, loving one another. Committing ourselves to that again and again and again, because it's simple, but it's not easy. And that's why we gather here. That's why we gather as a community of Christ. Because we need each other. Because it's simple, but it's not easy. And so today we celebrated baptism. And we would like to think that it's easy, right? I pour water on you, you become a Christian, it's great. Right? We want it to be that simple. It is that simple. But baptism it's a way of us feeding that need for a label while still allowing God to be explosive and still acknowledging that God is explosive and cannot be contained by those labels. Does that make sense? So, baptism, we acknowledge what God has already been doing. We acknowledge the Christian life. We name it. We say, we see and we accept that God is in our life doing incredible things. And we know and we commit to a life in which we follow Christ. And we accept that call to go out and do those things. We are going to live a life dedicated to Christ. Guys, God is already doing that. It's us needing to name it. Does that make sense? So sacraments are when you and I finally wake up to something and we're like, oh. Because let me tell you what, marriage doesn't happen when I bless you. Marriage happens the first time you're like, oh my God, that person's so annoying. But you're like, I love him anyway. I think, maybe. and you wake up the next morning and you try it again. That's when God has acted. That's when we know that God has acted. It has nothing to do with when I put magic hands on it. When I put magic hands on it, did you notice these fingers right here? These are the ones they bless. I know, have you ever noticed that, like, in Roman Catholic churches, they, like, wash these fingers? That's why. Because these are the ones they bless. These are the good ones. The rest of them, they're good for baseball. Sorry. Squirrels! Squirrels everywhere! Lots of coffee, guys. Lots and lots of coffee, lots and lots of squirrels. So, when we come to baptism, we accept that, and we name it, and we embrace it, and we follow it. And that today is what Charlie is doing. Charlie has been experiencing and seeing God in his life for 8 years. His family has been experiencing and seeing God in his life since he was conceived. We've known that God, you and I have known that God is in Charlie's life this whole time because we see it. We've watched him grow. We've watched him accept Christ. We've watched him grow and change and live a life where he experiences Christ. But today, Charlie says, yes. Charlie wakes up in the morning and says, sometimes this Christian thing is hard. And I get frustrated, and it's not easy. But I'm willing to come back and do it again. And that is the miracle of baptism. Now, we are going to perform a baptism and a sacrament, and I'm going to use the magic hands. But God is already doing that. That's just a photo op for you and I. And that's just a chance for Charlie, when he gets really frustrated, or his parents get really frustrated, to be like, oh yeah, we've got this thing that I've committed to, and I'm willing to commit again and again and again to it. It's us marking what God is doing. It's not the labels. It's not the categories. It's not the control. It's not the system. It's us saying God is explosive, and we cannot control God. But we can say, I will, with God's help. So let's say it.
We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.